Glad to see you all here for our quarterly, soon-to-be monthly, responsible stewardship educational training and fun get-together. We have a good program today. Joining me today, I'm Bruce Berger. I'm the chair of Responsible Stewardship and the president of the Council on Finance and Administration. I need more coffee. I've been on Zoom all morning. With us is the lovely and talented Angela Thomas, our CFO, and she will be leading the discussion along with Jana Collins, who is also lovely and talented, and Deirdre McGee, another lovely and talented staff member. You know, we're lucky to have a lot of really talented people at our central office, and it's good to have them here to speak today. So I would like to just go ahead and have Angela lead us off, and I might have a few closing comments at the end. We'll see. Thank you.
Thanks, Bruce. Good morning, everybody. Thank y'all for taking time with us. I know in the middle of summer, on a hopefully beautiful day, wherever you are, maybe slightly warmer or cooler, but thanks for taking time with us. We wanted to give you some preliminary info and introduce some 2021 plans or changes or updates to our insurance programs that we think are going to be helpful and hopefully a little more cost effective for our local churches, give our pastors some improved or enhanced benefits or options for their health insurance, and then provide better support for our churches with property and liability insurance issues. I know that's for most of our churches one of our biggest budget items, and so we take great care in trying to monitor and maintain and improve those programs. So we're going to start with I think probably the easier topic to get our heads around, and that's health insurance. We've got an enhancement to our coverage plan. We'll still be using our same administrator, but the plan will be expanded pretty significantly next year. So Jana Collins is going to walk us through kind of the highlights, get an intro. We've only got an hour to cover both topics, so we're going to kind of hit the high spots, give you enough to start looking at the questions that you need to ask, and also making sure we point you in the direction of good resources and contacts. So Jana, if you will get us started with health insurance, we're all ready.
Hi everyone, hopefully everybody can hear me. So as Angela said, we're going to have a few changes with our health insurance starting January 1st, 2021. We call our health insurance Health Flex. You might have heard that terminology. We call it that because it's a bundle, well, Westpath calls it that actually, because it's a bundled health program that includes medical, dental, and vision. And right now, Mountain Sky, any clergy person that is appointed in a full-time appointment, whether that be full-time at one church, half and half makes one, quarter and half makes one, 3/4 and quarter makes one. We have a lot of different scenarios where clergy are in one church, 2 or 3, that could render them eligible for the Health Flex plan. It's only a full-time appointment that renders somebody eligible for Health Flex. So right now, Mountain Sky Conference offers 2 health plans for clergy to pick from. And they do that at annual election, and every fall they pick whatever plan they want. As most of you know, if the clergy person at your church is on Health Flex, you see that as a line item, medical, on your monthly pension and health invoice that comes from the conference. And you only see one number. So the current number that we bill monthly for the Health Flex coverage is actually a blended rate between our two existing plans. And the premium for those two plans really they were pretty close. So the Conference Board of Pension and Health decided, for sake of simplicity, we would just create a blended rate to bill churches, regardless of what plan that the pastor had chosen. So pretty straightforward. As you know, then the clergy person, the church is responsible for the single premium, the single coverage. Now, the clergy person can choose dependent. They can have a spouse, or they can have children. So there's actually 3 tiers of coverage: single coverage, 2-party, and family. So we currently bill the church whatever level of coverage that the clergy person has chosen. And like I said earlier, the church is responsible for the single coverage. And then if the clergy person has chose dependents to be on the plan, that's between the church and the clergy person as to who pays for that extra coverage. The conference really doesn't get involved in that. And, you know, I've seen all sorts of cases. Sometimes the church will pay for the whole thing. Sometimes they'll pay a part of it. Whatever they choose to do, that's great. And how that should be handled, if the church is going to have the pastor pay for some of that dependent coverage, that the correct way that should be handled, it should be a before tax payroll deduction for that clergy to pay for that extra premium. It would be treated very similar to an UMPIP, a 403B deduction, if you're all familiar with that. If your clergy person has chosen a before tax contribution for that, it would be treated the exact same way, just called medical instead of 403B. So with all that preliminary said, when we're gonna go into the Health Flex exchange for 2021, and it's called the exchange because it operates kind of like a public exchange, meaning there's several choices. And I'm gonna try to share my screen here. Here it is. So hopefully you can all see this. This is on our conference website, and I'm sure you've all been on there, and I'm sure you've read everything that's on it and you have it memorized. But if you go to the administration tab here and you arrow down, you're going to get all this stuff. So what I am looking at here is the benefits section, and then health and wellness, to be specific to what we're speaking about today. Now, as you could see, I've already started to build information here about the Health Flex Exchange coming January 1st, 2021. And I've got several documents here, summary, the plan comparisons. There was actually a video webinar held back on May 21st. I did that in collaboration with Westpath. We had a pretty fair attendance on that. That was advertised to the clergy that were on the Health Flex plan. We have, like I said, we had pretty good attendance on that. So that was a really high level introduction, kind of what I'm going to give you today about what Health Flex Exchange is. And then this last link here actually would take you to the Westpath website, and they have some very good educational videos on there also explaining what Health Flex Exchange is. But one of the basic things I wanted to cover, I'll just click on this summary one when this opens up. So like I said before, we have 2 medical plans. Now we're going to have 6. Right now we have 1 dental plan. Now we're going to have 3. And right now we have 1 vision plan, and now we're going to have 3. So this is going to open up a lot of flexibility for pastors to choose what level of coverage they want. We've had some concern from some of our younger clergy in the past that our plan is basically, for lack of a better word, too rich, too expensive for them, that they don't need all that coverage. Well, now there's going to be an opportunity for them to pick a lesser rich plan, if you will. And with the difference in the cost in that, they're going to be able to save money in an HRA or an HSA that they can use for out-of-pocket medical expenses. So if there's any clergy on this call, everything I just said is going to be very meaningful to you in the days and months to come. For the church leadership, probably not so much. You're not going to really need to spend a lot of time memorizing all these different plans, what the differences are and all that. Don't bother yourself with it. What the church leadership is going to have to become familiar with is the new way that this HealthFlex exchange is going to affect our billing. And I'll lead up to that, but your statement, your monthly pension and health statement that comes from the conference is going to have to look a little different than it does now. So to kind of get our arms around why it will look different, what we have with the HealthFlex exchange is called a premium credit. So the conference Board of Pension and Health is already voted on a premium credit. And the premium credit, you can really think of it like the premium that you're currently billed, except the fact is now, you're still responsible just for single coverage. That part is not going to change. But now with that premium credit, the clergy person is going to open up to this a la carte menu of choices. And they may choose a plan that is more expensive than the premium credit, in which case they would owe some extra money because they would pay for it, or they may choose something that's less than the premium credit, in which case they would get monies put into an HR or HSA account, depending on what kind of plan they pick. So to illustrate this, we have two pastors here, John and Judy. So this conference has chosen this is just a hypothetical example. This isn't Mountain Sky numbers or Pastor John and Judy out of Mountain Sky, but monthly premium credit amounts. So in this example, this conference has chosen 607 as their monthly premium credit amount. So John, as you could see, picked the really rich plan. He picked a plan that's 812. So that means John's got to pay the difference. Now Judy, on the other hand, she picked a plan that was less expensive. So she has $8 left over, and that's going to get put in to her health account. So what this is going to look like on your monthly invoice, I'm going to try to share. So I'm meeting with our software folks later this week. This top example is really what our statement looks right now. It's actually courtesy of Kim James. She said I could use her church as an example. And I wanted to use this because I wanted to illustrate what our current medical billing looks like and a sample of medical billing under the HealthLife Exchange. Now, this down here is just a little template I got from our software company. This is actually another conference's invoice, but we purpled out the names to protect the innocent. But I just wanted to compare and contrast here how things are going to look different for you. So right now, this is like what you see. So Kim James here, she's got single coverage. There's her premium amount. She's also got an MRA, a medical reimbursement account. So you should all know that's a payroll deduction that you would make. This medical line, then you're either, right now, you're either getting the single tier, the two-party tier, or the family tier. And then, like I said earlier, it's up to the church and the clergy person who pays if there's dependent coverage added. Pretty straightforward the way it is now, but this doesn't really tell you for like this MRA, it doesn't jump out to you and say that's a payroll deduction. I think most of you probably know that, but it doesn't say that. So under our new, what potentially our new bills, hopefully going to look pretty close to this. So you might be saying, why is there two of everything? Well, this sample's got two pastors apparently. So you see, here's the coding down here. So you see a abbreviation here for what spells out to be the employer share of the health insurance. So this 1,200 you see in two spots, they got two pastors. That 1,200 then would be the premium credit. So that is the premium credit for a single coverage. So that is what you, the church, would be responsible to pay. That's why we got employer share up here. And it's with the CPP and the CRIS, the other things that the church is obligated to pay for their clergy. So pretty straightforward. But what I think is going to be helpful for the church is we're going to break it out, and down here you see participant share. So what I can't talk. Participant share. What the difference is, that those are going to be payroll deductions. So we're telling you. So we're making it easier for you. So one of these pastors, between the two of them, one has chosen a DCA and one has chosen an MRA. So those would be payroll deductions. But this is what I wanted to really hone in on. Right here you see this line, which means participant share of health flex insurance. So the fact that there's only one of these lines means one of these pastors up here chose a plan that wasn't more expensive. So they don't owe anything. One of them chose one that was more expensive. So they owe this as the difference. So that would be considered then all these, I should say, are before tax payroll deductions. And I'm going to see about with our software guys if we can indicate that somewhere here. Maybe after participant share, we can put a little note, you know, these are before tax payroll deductions. But what I think will help churches with this new format is we're really going to split it out, and it's going to be pretty apparent to you for what pastor, what the amount of the payroll deduction is that you should be taking. Now, bear in mind, our billing has always been monthly. So if, I don't know what everybody's payroll schedule is in your church. I know some of you are monthly, some are semi-monthly, very few of you are bi-weekly. But whatever your particular payroll schedule is, obviously, if you're not monthly, you're going to have to cut this number in half so you know what to do if you're semi-monthly. You're just going to have to adjust that, obviously, like I'm sure you all do now, for whatever your payroll schedule is. While I got this up, I think maybe I've got 10 minutes. They said I could have a half hour. Does anybody have any questions about this? Do these concepts make sense? Does this bill make sense? Is there anything else you'd like to see if possible? No questions? It all's clear as day? All right, well, good. That was easy. So I know I'm just, since there's no questions, real brief here to close out my part. I did want to talk a little bit about payroll. I know there's a lot of churches that struggle with payroll because they're trying to do it manual. They're not using any sort of software, you know, whether it's QuickBooks or I've heard some names of other software folks are using now. Shelby, somebody said. So I think there's quite a few churches that are using some sort of payroll software, which I can't recommend enough to do that. And it especially comes important in the case of these before tax payroll deductions. It just makes it so much easier, because if these payroll deductions are not done correctly, whether it's with these medical deductions or UMPIP for that matter, the clergy person is not capitalizing on the tax benefits for those things. So right now, the conference uses paychecks for our payroll. And that was a recent change, actually a couple years ago, actually, or a year and a half now, I think it was. We used Wells Fargo before, and they suspended their payroll services. So the timing was great, because along about that time, Westpath had garnered a relationship with Paychecks, and they do a great job. I've had really good luck with them. We get a discount because Westpath has a contract with Paychecks. Paychecks is very familiar with clergy payroll, so they know what housing allowance is. They know that the clergy are exempt from Social Security and Medicare. So those things about clergy payroll that are different is not gone on them. They're well versed in those areas. So throughout the summer, I'm in the process of trying to put together just kind of a document with some basic concepts about clergy payroll. And I did talk a little bit about payroll last October on our Responsible Stewardship call, if any of you were on that. And I think my notes are on the website with that, the webinar recording of that. But there's a lot of things I need to add since that, especially in light of this new change with these medical deductions. But I do encourage folks to look into Paychecks. So Paychecks is actually going to be contacting churches directly about getting signed up with them. And as part of the relationship between Westpath and Paychecks, like the conference does, you would get a discount. Make sure to say that you're being referred by the Mount Sky Conference. But we're going to be putting out some information about that. And I think for the cost, which I don't think is much for most of you, probably don't have a lot of people on your payroll. I think the cost would really be worth the headache for y'all trying to do these deductions manually. If you have a good software system that you like now, great, kudos, keep using it, because if it's a reputable software for payroll processing, it's going to know what these deductions are. So it's pretty easy to set them up. So any questions about payroll or anything I can answer about that right now? Wow, you guys are easy.
So I have a question. Is the Paycheck a software, or are they a payroll processing provider?
They're a payroll processing provider, and they're web-based. So you wouldn't have to like download stuff on your computer. So like I go to their website and log in. Now, I think you could do it a couple different ways. So I actually, for the conference payroll, you know, all our people I've loaded them in there. We have salary, we have exempt and non-exempt employees at the conference. So once you load in your exempt, your salary folks, whenever you click start payroll, they just all pop up and it's all pre-populated. The only thing I have to do with payroll then is I have to enter the hours worked for my non-exempt employees. So it's pretty straightforward.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. So I think my time's running down, but just to give you a timeline of what's going to be happening here. Like I said, we launched the first discussion with the clergy back in May. I'm going to be hammering them with emails and stuff. We're going to have a lot more training coming up. Angela and I are going to participate in a training with Westpath coming up in August sometime. They're still determining the dates on that, I think. But that's going to be, it's called Train the Trainer. So it's going to equip Angela and I even more so than we are right now to help navigate the clergy through these upcoming changes. And then we'll have some Zoom meetings, or, you know, everything is looking like it's going to be virtual due just to our current circumstances. But we'll be having some targeted trainings, Zoom meetings with the clergy in the fall. And the annual election usually falls around October, late October, early November. I think it actually goes into November. And that's when the clergy will actually make their selections from all these plans. And then the new billing format would start then for the January invoice that you would get from the conference. And it's for any of you that do the payroll at the church, it's always good to ask the clergy person. They can actually share with you their, they get a little readout, spit out, whatever you want to call it, after they do annual election. And it will have the amounts on it. So that would be very helpful to you all to know what plans they picked. So you know what the cost is going to be, the potential payroll deduction is going to be before it just shows up on your bill. So you can get your payroll system set up prior to your first, you're not scrambling then before your first payroll in January. I know a lot of the clergy aren't real good about telling leadership in the church that they signed up for an MRA or they signed up for a DCA. So encourage communication with them about it. Just, hey, what'd you sign up for? I'm going to have to know this for payroll purposes. So anyway.
Have the Health Flex rates been set yet?
Well, we're not going to call them Health Flex rate. We're going to call it a premium credit.
All right. Have the premium credits been set up yet?
It has. Yeah. It's, isn't it 968 off the top of my head? I want to say 968. So that,
thank you.
That number was arrived at by extensive modeling that was done with the help of Westpath and our Conference Board of Pension and Health. We looked at all the scenarios. So that number is a number that is going to give the clergy person really the same value that they have now. That there's going to be default plans and all this and that. I'm not going to go into that because you guys don't probably care about that, but just know that the premium credit doesn't short them on the benefit they're going to get for single coverage. It actually lumps in the fact that we have dental coverage right now. So they're not going to get shorted on the amount of money available to them, I guess is what I'm trying to say, when they go out and start shopping for what plans they want.
Thank you, Jana. I appreciate that. Very good presentation. Let's go back to Angela and to Deirdre to talk about property insurance and liability and yada yada.
Yeah, all the fun stuff. So while I think Deirdre's going to share her screen to our website, we're referencing the conference website because we're trying really hard to give you centralized access to all the information that you need administratively as church leaders. And so while Deirdre works on sharing her screen, I think, I'm just going to give you a quick update and let you know, as church leaders, you should have received 2 pieces of hard mail correspondence from the conference in the last 2 months or so. The first one was a fairly large packet, maybe 7-9 pages, that was the introduction to the 2021 conference-wide property and liability insurance program. And the second just went out in the last couple of weeks, and that was an updated list of conference contacts, and that included conference staff, CRMs, and some of our insurance contacts at Church Mutual. And then Gary Dyer, who is a volunteer within the Mountain Sky Conference, who is also an insurance agent, but not with Church Mutual. He does this work on behalf and with our churches strictly as a volunteer. But all those contacts are on that second mailing. And again, you should have gotten it in the last week to 10 days, I think. So if you have not received mail from the conference specifically related to property and liability insurance, then please contact Deirdre McGee in our office. And it looks like she's not able to share the screen, so I'm going to see if I can share mine. But contact Deirdre. Her phone and email are both listed on the conference website under staff. And you can contact me as well, but I'm going to send it over to Deirdre to follow up. So, save a step and go straight to Deirdre. She is our property and liability insurance coordinator for the conference, and this is a relatively new change in her role. She's been supporting us administratively in finance and administration with just a variety of responsibilities. And because this is such an important part of our church budget and church stewardship and protecting our church members, our visitors, guests, and our property, we wanted to make sure we had adequate attention and focus directed to insurance. So Deirdre is going to be your conference primary point of contact. Some of you already know that, and you've already been communicating with her over the last year and a half or so. But I just want to make you aware that we've got resources available, and we are anxious to assist you and help with your questions. It's a lot of stuff to navigate when you start looking at insurance. It overwhelms me, and I deal with it pretty regularly, so I understand what it's like in the church to get a random bill or random notice or letter and not be quite sure what to do with it. So I'm directing you again to our conference website, and again, you get there through administration, and we have a section for property and liability insurance. And this is always a work in process. So just be aware, I would say you're getting bored or you're checking your email. Go ahead and click and just see, is there something new out here that would relate to my work or my responsibility? That applies to benefits, to stats and mission shares. Certainly, if you have a specific question, reach out to us. But like most websites, good websites are always changing. There's always new information. So if the information hasn't changed in 3 months, it's old information. But we're trying to keep this updated, and you'll notice we try to mark our communications group, tries to make sure they've identified for us what's new or the latest and greatest. But I want to make sure that you know first, this Introduction to 2021 Property and Liability Insurance Plan, this is basically a copy of the letter that you all got several weeks ago, or should have gotten. And it basically outlines the summary of what's going to be happening with our 2021 plan. So to summarize it, and if you're painfully familiar with insurance, this will be a repeat. So I apologize for that. But some of you may not know how complex property and liability insurance can be. So we basically have a conference-wide plan, which is similar to a health plan in the respect that if all of our churches participate, it helps all of us save money. We are more cost effective as a large group than we are as a small group or as individual churches. Much in the way that a group health insurance plan works best when you don't have just sick people in the plan. You've got sick and healthy and a variety of ages and a diversity of health needs and locations for that matter. So the property and liability group plan works the same way. When we're all in it together, we all benefit from it. Now, are there some specific churches whose premiums might be higher or lower if they went and shopped outside? Absolutely. But what's important to remember is because Mountain Sky Conference is so geographically diverse, we've got different threats and risks, and some of our churches are located in areas where wind and hail is a significant factor. Some of our churches less so. And to the extent that we have large or significant claims in a year, of course, that drives premiums. You all know this from your personal insurance, whether that's auto or homeowners insurance. So this works the same way. We have a group plan so that we get the most benefit that we can. And we also have a dedicated team through, right now, Church Mutual, to help us navigate, manage our plan, hopefully answer questions effectively and consistently, and to help manage claims as they come up. So our insurance plan is based on the premise that everybody participates. There are some exceptions, and of course, because of the diversity in our churches, we have a tiered program, which means we have different levels of coverage or participation, depending on, to the extent possible, the size and needs of our churches. I don't want to speak too much about the tiers because I will certainly misquote something. But the key for you today is to remember that as you get information from either the conference or from Church Mutual, very little of that communication, whether it's email or snail mail, is pure junk. We try to be very cautious about what we're mailing, one, because of the cost of mailing, but also because we understand that we all get overloaded with junk mail. So if you see something from Church Mutual or from Mountain Sky Conference, particularly if it's been mailed to you, please don't assume that it's junk. Please at least take a cursory look. You don't have to memorize it, but at least make yourself familiar with what's happening next. We're trying to make sure from the property and liability insurance standpoint that we're communicating something with you every month. One reason is because if you are one of those churches that might have an exception or an exemption from the standard coverage requirements of the plan, you're a smaller church. For churches that might have a day school or daycare, you're going to have some slightly different insurance needs or issues. Now is the time to be looking at what you have versus what you need. And part of what we've shared with you are the standard or minimum coverages across the board for for our churches. And if you think that you those coverages don't apply to you for size of church or special circumstance, now's the time to start asking those questions. Don't wait until January when you get your bill, because at that point it's too late to do anything about it. The deadline to explore changes or make a request through your district office and through us at the conference is October 1. And the reason for that is because we have to set our plan in November, and then bills go out early in 2021. Once that thing is set, we're basically all on board the train. And once the train starts moving, we can't just jump off. So now is the time to start looking at what you've got. If you've participated in Church Mutual's surveys or requests for information in the past, then we already have a good idea of what your coverages look like and what your costs have looked like. If you've not participated in that, well, it's difficult for us to help you navigate questions and exploration of what might be best fit for your church context, because we don't have any information to work with. So help us by sharing when you get those requests for statistical information. The reason we collect that is so that we can help improve the plan, manage the cost. Right now, the premiums for 2021 are not set because, of course, we're in the middle of claim season. So we don't know what's going to happen with the weather, with fire, any number, flood, any number of incidents that would generate claims across the conference. And of course, as you know, claims drive premiums in some respect. The insurance company is in business to make money. So we're in the middle of claim season, and we won't really know what the impact of that is for a little while yet. So far through spring and summer, we've been in really good shape. Right now, we have an average expectation of what the premiums will look like next year, but it's just too early to tell for sure. Regardless of what the premiums come down from Church Mutual, at the conference level, trustees are also working on some creative ways to assist those churches who have exceptional needs, or who have, maybe exceptionally high premiums because of past experience or other factors, to help assist in that. So we are exploring several different options to help keep the cost of property and liability insurance as low as possible. But we also want to make sure we've got adequate coverage. And I think that the maximum, whether it's individual, family, or business, or in our case, nonprofit and church, as much insurance as you think you have, you almost never have enough. And the time to find out that you don't have adequate coverage is not when you've had an incident. So we want to make sure we're maintaining our minimum coverages as consistently as possible. Deadline, October 1, to get requests in for reducing coverage or for opting out of the conference-wide program. And that is an option. It's not one that we strongly encourage, because clearly the Board of Trustees has determined over a number of years that the group program is beneficial to all of us. But that is an option, and that's something that you within your church leadership might want to explore. Even if you think you don't necessarily want to make that change, I always encourage our church leaders to know your numbers. And if you get questions from trustee members or church members, it's always good to say, we've looked at this and we know this is a good deal or a good situation or necessary plan for us, and here's why. So I have a CPA background, and I always say I trust the numbers, but I also want to verify them and make sure that I know what I'm looking at, and particularly with a budget item as expensive as insurance. So the other point, October 1st is the deadline for making those requests. If you've not made a written request and gone through that process with your district superintendent, through our office, if you've not been engaged with Church Mutual or Deirdre, me, your district superintendent, you will be automatically enrolled in the group plan, conference-wide plan. And again, once we start that ball rolling, we can't pull it back in because again, everything is set based on the population that's enrolled. So now is the time. If you've got questions and need more information about the program itself, again, refer back to the letter that we sent on June 1st, first week of June, thereabouts. It's got a summary of the coverages. It's got a summary of the requirements. It's got your district superintendent contact information also listed there. If you don't want to go to the website and go look for them. And it's also got tier assignments, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, and what the coverages are based on each of those tiers. And again, the tiers are determined by size of church, basically. And then we have coverage that applies to all tiers regardless of your size, and that includes general liability coverage, property damage, legal liability, sexual misconduct, incidental counseling for certain pastoral counseling needs. So there's a host of insurance coverages that are addressed here. Outside of that coverage, I want to just make you aware or remind you, we also have workers' compensation requirements, and those vary by state, but that is a separate insurance issue. And one other piece that was confusing to me coming in new to Mountain Sky at the beginning of this year was we also have directors, officers, and trustees liability coverage, which is a group program, cyber liability, and employment practices liability. And those are all basically a form of errors and omissions insurance, i.e. As church leaders, we made a mistake that ended up being costly. We might have been sued, or we might just have had an incident come up because we made a mistake along the way administratively. And those insurance plans help protect our church leadership against a lawsuit or some other liability incurred in their role as church leaders. So that's a group plan that the conferences build, and then we send to you an allocation of that cost. That allocation is based on your local church expense relative to all your sibling churches across the conference. So a very, very small church will get a very, very small portion of that premium. But just a reminder for those of you that might be in the church business office, that bill comes from the conference, and it is, again, just an allocation of the premium that we were charged as a whole by Church Mutual. So you're going to get some bills from Church Mutual directly. You're going to get bills from the workers' comp provider, which may bill through Church Mutual or may not, depending on your unique setting. And then you'll get bills from the conference for that DOT, EPL, cyber insurance. I'm looking at Deirdre on the screen to see what have I missed in the big recap of property liability insurance. And then I'll open up for questions that you all might have.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify, first of all, is it afternoon yet to everyone? And I am Deirdre McGee, if I have not met you. I just want to clarify on the different insurance invoices you may receive. You will get one for your property liability and automobile insurance if you have that. Another invoice from Church Mutual will be for the workers' compensation, if it applies, and an umbrella policy. So those come in 2 different mailings. And then, as Angela said, from the conference, you're going to get an invoice for your directors, officers, and trustees insurance and cyber liability. Now, the director, officer, trustee coverage definitely is important. And when you have new people, say, come onto your trustee board, they're going to want to know if we make a decision on this board and our members do not agree with it, therefore filing suit or whatever, do I have protection? And yes, you do under that coverage to a degree. Anytime you turn in a claim or ask if you have coverage, it does have to be investigated, you know, so we really can't say yes, but that's the type of situation it's for. So I just wanted to clarify that. Angela, if you would click on the vehicle loaning policy on the website, I think that's pretty important to folks. If you have a van in your church and a church in Coral Springs calls you up and says, can I borrow your van? There are things you need to do, but yes, they can borrow your van. If First Baptist Church asks you if they can borrow your van, that's a no-no. So anyone in the United Methodist Conference, we can share vans, and there are requirements, and drivers have to, you know, have a valid license and not a lot of tickets or accidents. You know, you do have to work through the conference for that, but it is possible. And I think that's real important for smaller churches who may not have vans, but have youth. There's some people they need to transport somewhere. Okay, if we can go back to, there we go. The plan. The incident claim forms are on this website. And of course, when you have a claim is when you know what you've been paying all this insurance for. And I like to say this is where the rubber meets the road. Now, you can call in a claim, you can go and fill in an incident report. There are reports for property, liability, automobile. At times, we have very serious things that happen, and you need response right away. Please give us a call or call Church Mutual Direct, and we'll get you taken care of. Don't think that you must do this form in order to get service. And I can say, if you haven't experienced Church Mutual's claim service, I think it's very good, and they're very responsive. Are there any other questions or any questions right now?
I have a question. Our church had a claim last year, and through discussions with Pamela Kesher and our main board of trustees out of Denver, we decided to stay with our tier 1 coverage. Since we've had a claim and it was quite substantial, we understand that our premium is probably going to change somewhat from last year. But my question is this: we were told that this particular tier had the umbrella payment. Is that umbrella payment, is that a static number, or is that based on the final numbers that we get for our premiums? In other words, will that remain static for the umbrella payment, or is that in flux with what our premiums for the tier are?
Okay, a couple of things. Because we are a group policy, because you had your individual claim, you're not going to individually be assessed. The way claims are looked at is for the whole group.
All right.
So you're not going to feel that individually.
Okay.
That's
The other.
helpful. Go ahead, Deirdre, I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. As far as the tiers go, the umbrella policy should be a separate policy, and it is allocated due to your building values and how that whole premium is calculated. Angela, were you going to add something?
I was just going to say, I'm glad you asked that question, because it reminded me to emphasize, even though this is in the communication we've shared, to remind you, if you had an exception or exemption in 2020, it does not automatically roll forward. So if you requested a tier 1 exception, or if you had an opt-out or an adjustment to the standard coverage for any reason that was approved for 2020, that does not automatically roll forward. You have to make a new request or new application for exception for 2021. And again, October 1 is the deadline for that. But particularly if you've had an exception for your church's insurance coverage, be sure you follow up for 2021 or you will lose it. It's not an automatic rollover.
Okay.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Understand.
Any other questions? I know that's a lot of information in a short time frame, especially if it's not something you work with every day. If we don't have any other questions, I'm going to punt back to Bruce for his closing remarks for all of us.
I'd like to thank you all for attending and for all of you caring enough about your churches to keep yourself informed about what's going on. That's always healthy and it's always appreciated. We have decided, given the number of issues that we're facing, that we're going to move to a format of doing the training sessions once a month rather than once a quarter. And that doesn't mean I expect all of you to attend, but you can pick and choose which ones you think are most appropriate for you. We'll be starting that. Our normal timing is the second Tuesday of every month from 11 to 12 Mountain Time. And I'm pretty sure everybody's in Mountain Time. I don't know about the Idaho church, but yeah, we're Mountain Time. And so the second thing I wanted to say is please keep abreast of what's being posted on the conference website, because there's a lot of very good information that some people are working very, very hard to put the information together and get it posted. So look at it. It's good information. You can see some good information around how to keep your churches safe under the pandemic and a number of other good issues. Also to keep abreast on what's going on in mission shares and the general and jurisdictional apportionments, and also keep abreast on where we're headed as a denomination. Care for one another, and thank you for being here. Love you all. Bye-bye.